Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to our continuing coverage of the Texas Bigfoot Conference here at the Bigfoot Capitol of Texas, Jefferson, Texas. In this segment, we are joined by cryptid researcher and host of the Cryptid Chronicles, Ryan Edwards, out of San Antonio. How you been, my man?
Been doing good.
Fantastic. Last time we saw you, we were actively at the Wonderland UFO Festival in San Antonio. How did that end up for the day?
It ended up pretty good. I know Dan Allen Jones was there. We had a couple of the speakers, and it went pretty well. It was a good turnout.
Nice. Yeah, apparently that's like the third year it's been going on. It's over in the Wonderland of Americas. Really neat little conference. I was really looking forward to checking a few people out and had to leave a little early, but it was great seeing you there.
Yeah.
So how have things been going in your world?
Been going good. Been working on my podcast, been doing my research. Hopefully trying to get my second book out by the end of this year or early next year, trying to get that out as soon as I can.
Great. Well, let the audience see your first book, actually, Cryptids of the World. Great read. Let's start getting into a couple of things here. Out of everything that you did in your book, what was probably your favorite part of research for that?
Probably my favorite part of researching is finding the correlations between like cryptozoological creatures and paleontological animals.
Okay.
Like when you see, like with Bigfoot, there are certain anatomical details in there that show it's an unknown species. It's not just imagination and speculation. There is actual anatomical details and morphological and behavioral that show there is a biological species behind these cryptids. And that's for a lot of them, from Bigfoot to the Yeti to the Nandi bear of Kenya to the Queensland tiger of Australia. A lot of these creatures correlate to known prehistoric species.
Interesting. And, even to consider that, the fact that we have numerous times, ivory-billed woodpecker's back. That is one that within at least my lifetime went extinct.
Yes.
And is back in numbers, not just like, hey, look, there's an ivory-billed woodpecker. Even the coelacanth, that's probably one of the most famous versions of cryptids that have come to be. They were talked about and everything else being seen until they were finally caught off the coast of Africa in a fishing net.
Yes.
So even the recent find of the, I guess, what is it, the long-necked snaky face that they're calling it, the freshwater plesiosaur?
Yes.
That people have hypothesized that is Nessie for years as a plesiosaur that's living in fresh water. They're like, well, plesiosaurs live in salt water.
There's no way for it to exist. Until we find something that correlates to something we've already been talking about.
Yeah. And what are some other examples of that? Because there's quite a few things. Even the idea of Bigfoot, Nephilim, giants, that kind of stuff. I hear in the last year we've actively found a dragon man in China, where 7 feet tall, cranium about twice the size of your average human, very much many descriptions of giants, things like that. So,
like Dragon Man, it's a recent. Well, it's based on primarily teeth and a mandible.
Yeah.
But from there, we can speculate on what the rest of this human look like.
Yeah.
And there are many human lineages that diverge off of ours. You have Homo floresiensis of Flores, and down there you have stories of the Ebogogo. What they describe as small, hairy humanoids that catch kids and eat them. Ebogogo means the hungry grandma, pretty much.
Oh, wow.
And then in 2005, we discovered Homo floresiensis on the same island. So how are people referencing an extinct species? Also in parts of Africa, you have a creature called the billy ape. Think of a chimpanzee, but the size of a human. And before that, the natives called an animal called a kulakamba. What people thought it was a mix of gorilla and chimp. They called it the lion killers because it was supposedly so vicious. And then we discovered the billy ape in 2007, this giant chimpanzee that correlates to these indigenous stories.
Interesting. Yeah, and we talk about that regularly on the show, be it Sasquatch, giants, what have you. We really should be looking across the globe at accounts and stories from traditional Aboriginal human beings, mainly because of the fact of, A, they have lived in the region longer than anybody, and many of these traditions are unbroken oral traditions. So even to this day, the Indians of the Pacific Northwest tell their family, like, don't do this with the Sasquatch. Don't do that with the Sasquatch.
Don't whistle at night. Don't go out at night. Things like that.
And not necessarily out of fear, but out of peaceful cooperation.
Respect.
You know, much like, hey, when a deer comes into the camp, this is what you do. More of a situational awareness of what to do when you're out in the woods. This for them is a known quantitative. It's not a mystery.
It's not an unknown variable. Anglo-Saxon, how we see it, how like all culture sees Bigfoot as like an unknown. To them, it's just another animal in the woods. But for them, it's also seen as like a people. It's another people in the woods.
Oh, yeah. There are active stories of them trading with Bigfoot and Sasquatch, and acknowledgement that they are an active tribe, according to their teachings. So, yeah, we really do need to start looking more toward, I think, a native solution, so to speak.
That's one thing I look for in cryptids is I look to see if there are indigenous stories of them before white people came into the culture, because that shows me it's more likely. Because once colonists come into an area, the culture automatically gets changed.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, look at the Wendigo, for instance. The Wendigo, the original descriptions was of a more like a pale humanoid, like what we call crawlers nowadays.
Yeah.
But once the Europeans went in there, it became more werewolf-like, and became what we now see as like a deer-like animal.
Yeah.
And that's because cultural appropriation and cultural inebriation, it's the mixing of cultures.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to basically take the native story and give it the characteristics of what they know, which of course would have been lycanthropy, things like that from Eastern Europe, all that kind of stuff. So, fully alive in Greece, ancient Rome, all that. So, like you said, to marry the two traditions together and that becoming the story from that point on, we really do responsibly have to take care of that. And I think that kind of brings us to the topic, like we got into with Jason McLean a little while ago, of the paranormal and cryptids. They have, over the last many decades, really started commingling, not just the communities, but the understandings, the research, the researchers even. Where do you stand on that?
With me, I've never seen cryptozoology as a paranormal science. I just see it as simply science of unknown species.
Sure.
But there is certain paranormal aspects to this field, but with me, I set that aside from true cryptozoology.
Yeah.
These cryptids I like to call neo-cryptids, because a lot of them have only come around the past 30, 40 years. Dogman, for instance.
Prime example.
Only came around in the 1990s, really.
Yeah.
Goatman, that only really started appropriating now in recent 10 years.
Yeah.
These neo-cryptids, or paracryptids, I like to call them, it's called another sect of cryptozoology I like to call paracryptozoology.
Yeah.
It's beyond physical unknown species, which is what true cryptozoology is.
Yes. And whether it's the study of indigenous species, like you said, that are known to cultures other than us, what have you, that is the field of actual cryptozoology. And we, not that there isn't a paranormal aspect, not that paranormal doesn't occur in conjunction with, but there's a far cry difference between a Sasquatch researcher and somebody researching Mothman.
Yes.
For example. And I'm not saying that Mothman is not an actual physical creature, things like that, but much more in the realm of paranormal than, let's say, like Jersey Devil, whose accounts go back to the 1800s, things like that,
Because, like, how I see it, I come at cryptozoology from very much an evolutionary and adaptation source. A lot of these cryptids are describing morphologies that just truly can't exist in the environment. Like, for instance, Mothman, flying humanoids. When you look at their descriptions, they're describing arms, legs, and wings. Something with a spinal cord and 6 limbs does not exist in modern day. all spinal animals have 4 limbs only. These have 6, so that takes it out of the natural category, and it shows something that's unnatural. What it is, I'm not sure. That's not where my research goes.
Sure, yeah, and and that's one thing that I love about you is that you are very bounded with what you do. Your research, like you said, is very much in the realm of unknown species, emerging species, things like that, which is far different than paracryptozoology, like you were saying.
Yes.
And now, what research have you had in the world of cryptids here in Texas?
Well, with Texas, I try to talk to as many eyewitnesses here in Texas as I can. But usually, I am based down in San Antonio, so I talk to eyewitnesses there. One big cryptid that's seen here in Texas is the Black Panther phenomenon.
Yep.
These black cats that I've seen around Texas, East Texas, West Texas, South, North, see these black cats. And it's interesting because truly what they are is very unknown. A lot of people believe they're just melanistic cougars.
Sure.
But DNA evidence has shown melanism doesn't really occur in cougars, especially not seen. So
yeah, it normally occurs in anything with stripes or spots.
Yes.
You gotta have the black part of your coat to melanize to begin with. I mean, I can express that. I'm melanized. So yeah, and being from Houston, one that always pops to mind for me was jaguarless. Not many people realize that yes, cougars once roamed the Houston area. I mean, that's why the Houston Cougars are named the Cougars. But there's an interesting animal, the jaguarless, that was and apparently went extinct, but has been seen in great numbers over the last decade.
Yes.
To the point that Texas Parks and Wildlife has started actively acknowledging them, ranging again, things like that. So,
for the cougar that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
At one time in San Antonio, there was people didn't believe they lived there until pets were going missing and people were seeing them climbing over fences.
Yeah.
So then the officials have to say, well, these creatures are coming back into their natural habitats. Because, like the eastern cougar phenomenon, for instance, a lot of people don't believe the cougars live anywhere east of the Mississippi.
Yeah.
There's cougar sightings there all the time.
Yeah.
It's just not on official paperwork.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you hop into South Florida, things like that. There are absolutely cougars roaming around in the swamps, all that kind of stuff. And even that, interestingly enough, we talk regularly with folks like Ken Gerhardt, things like that, about how sightings actively change regionally. How, especially whenever you get into like the southeastern United States, you're talking much more like skunk ape than you are Bigfoot, things like that. So,
because with me, when people talk about like skunk ape Bigfoot, they think it's like 2 different species, or maybe a subspecies of Bigfoot. With me, I don't personally believe it's a subspecies. I believe it's what we call an ecomorph. An ecomorph is the same species, but due to change of environment, they've changed. Like leopards, for instance. Leopards roam from Africa all the way into Europe, parts of Europe and parts of Asia. The leopards that are indigenous to Europe had longer coats because it was a colder environment. The ones found in Africa are bigger than the ones in India. Are those 2 different species? No, it's the same species, but changed due to the ecology.
Literally Darwinized to their local climate and to their local food chain, everything else.
Yes.
And at that point, you're talking about something that may get bigger and bulkier because it's in a colder climate, needs to pack on fat for the winter, things like that. And that's interesting to think of it that way, because I've never really heard another cryptozoologist mention it like that it's really much more of a regional adaptation of the same species than A, a different species, or B, a subspecies.
Yes, because subspecies actually, it's very uncommon within ape lineages. Of course, you have like eastern gorillas, mountain gorillas, but technically, genealogically, it's all the same species, but just ecologically different because of different environments.
Yeah.
So if this Bigfoot, like when they talk about there's 7 types of Bigfoot, things like that, primatologically, that doesn't make sense. Because it's the same species that has evolved different for different environments.
Yeah, gorilla or lowland gorilla.
Yeah.
They're both gorilla.
Yeah.
They're just
Like
adapted for a different region.
Chimpanzees and bonobos, they're technically almost the same species. What happened is a chimpanzee population was separated by the Congo River.
Yep.
One became bonobo, one became chimpanzee. They're only less than one allele different in DNA, just that they changed because of different environments.
Yeah.
Same thing might be occurring here with Sasquatch.
And even socially changed.
Yes.
Socially changed to great effect and to great difference.
Yes, because taking for instance with chimpanzees, the chimpanzees north of the Congo River had to deal with gorillas, so they became a lot more violent. The bonobos south of the Congo didn't have any competition, so they became the bonobos of like very peace-loving kind of like the hippies or what they call it.
Which is what we see all the time on all the primatology shows, things like that, where the female is in charge of the tribe, of the, I guess, what is it? Not the tribe.
Troop.
The troop, yes. A lot of things are switched and swapped, and even the fact that they have sex for fun, not just for breeding.
Yes.
There are a lot of small things like that are actually pretty major whenever you're talking about animals.
Yes. It's very more almost human-like characteristics.
Yeah.
But for the longest time in primatology, you couldn't use human words like.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even in college, whenever I was doing psychology, things like that, constantly I can hear Dr. Churchill in my head all the time in his exact voice. Stop personifying, Chris.
Yeah.
Just because you see the ape doing this doesn't mean that they're doing it for that reason.
Yeah.
That's what you think.
Yes.
Because that's what you would do.
Yeah, because Jane Goodall was almost left out of academia when she used the word culture with chimpanzees.
Absolutely. Yeah. Her research took a long time to come to the table because of things like that. Despite almost a decade of observation in the field and depth observation to the point of acceptance into a troop.
Yes.
Where even being gone for a year or so, they would still recognize her.
Yes.
And that's pretty incredible. And like you said, to know that her research was pushed aside for a long time simply for using a terminology that now we are fully aware of.
Yes. Like when we think of like, for instance, with the Sasquatch phenomenon, a lot of people like to use the word culture with Sasquatch. And some people say, well, because it's culture, it must be a human species. Well, not necessarily. Like some non-human
there's
species
dog
have
culture.
Yes.
There's dog culture. Like, do you go around and sniff butts to say hi?
No,
I don't.
That's
but
their
they
own
do.
behavioral sets.
Yeah.
And that's what pretty much the definition of a culture.
Absolutely. Well, there's that. There's the pecking order within a pack of dogs, hierarchies. All of that is sign of culture.
Yes.
Absolutely. And to deny that, I think, is more than diminutive, and also
it's very human centrist.
Well,
we want to seem separated from the natural order.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that. I was actually just having that conversation with my wife the other day, and the fact that we all too often forget that we are just really, really big and complex animals.
Yes.
90% of our reaction to our environment, to everything that we do, is utterly guttural and instinctual, and it takes a lot to fight that.
Like psychologists say we try to go against our natural animalistic urges, but our animalistic urges are still there.
But do we?
Some people do. Some people don't. Yeah.
Do we?
A lot of people give into it because we want to see ourselves separate from the natural order from animals, but even Da Vinci said himself, we are just animals, but smarter.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah, and I mean, when you put it in those terms, it really does make it a lot easier to understand I think the reticent fear that some people have, of the unknown.
Yes.
Because, I mean, take a dog, pop him out somewhere that he ain't familiar. He may freak out for a little while.
It's a little monkey brain reacting.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you have to be willing to accept that. To be able to, out in the field, set something aside, not let it rent the spare space in your head while you were continuing an investigation.
Yes.
Like, you've got to be as cold and removed from what you are gathering as possible. You know, at least if you're out doing like hardcore field research, things like that. If you're taking pictures at a paranormal investigation, you normally aren't like snap, snap, snap. Ooh, let me see what I got. you could quite possibly be reading something into that because of the environment you're in and the ecstatic state you're in.
Yeah, like
everything.
Speaking about that, like that's why like with sometimes like when I watch like paranormal shows, when they say like, oh, listen to this EVP, and they put words over it, I think it's saying this. It's you're already putting in that fear and that bias already in there without people letting them choose what you think it's.
How about you take a blank piece of paper and everybody listen to it and write down what you think it says. Then let's put it in a hat and randomly draw it out and see if we all said the same thing.
It's going to be 5 different things.
But if you go up and you say, you know, I think it says this. What do you think?
And they're going to hear it.
You've already set the framework.
Yeah. Like,
you've literally set the foundation of decision. Now it's just 60-40 instead of 50-50.
Yes, there's literally a psychological experiment. What they do is they put the word Bill repeatedly. But what they do is they put a picture of Bill Nye, picture of a pill, then picture of something else, and you think it's saying different words.
Yeah.
It's saying the same word, but just because you're seeing that picture, you're going to alter what you hear.
Exactly. We really do experientially have to be very careful with that whenever we are looking at research, whenever we're reading research, even whenever you're reading your book, Jason's book, everything else. You've got to be willing to accept the fact that this is only a point of datum amongst a set of data.
Yes.
And be dispassionate. Don't worry about a point of datum like destroying your paradigm in which you live or anything like that. Just understand that it's one more piece on the Rubik's Cube.
Yes.
You know?
It's one more piece of the puzzle, and you need all those pieces. Like, even though people have different perspectives, different hypotheses, doesn't necessarily mean everyone's wrong. Everyone could be wrong. You never know. Everyone could be right. You never know.
One of the things we say on the show regularly, feel free to look it up. Until about 500 years ago, it was conspiracy theory that the earth was round.
Yes.
And if you said otherwise, you were burned at the stake, you were driven out of town, you were excommunicated.
Yes.
What have you. Till some dude decided to get a ship full of people together that were just crazy enough to sail to the horizon.
Yes.
And keep sailing.
Yes.
And then they eventually made it home. But amongst the history of humanity, for the longest jaunt, Earth was flat.
Yes.
And that was science.
Yes.
And that is what was taught.
Geocentrism. We thought we were the center of the universe for the longest time until we realized no, sun is. The sun is the center of our solar system, not even the universe.
Galileo, excommunicated for teaching it.
Yes.
Granted, he was teaching it in the name of the church, which is why. But prime examples of those things that, like, we until the time that enough people got together who were open of mind, open of heart, and not willing to point a finger and say burn him.
Yes.
The Earth was flat.
Yeah.
So we have to be willing to not point a finger at somebody's concept, and remember that in science you're allowed to hypothesize any crazy thing you want.
Yes.
It's through experimentation that we prove or disprove the hypothesis, and then it becomes theory.
Yes.
And then it's still not full-on science. It's still theory, like the theory of evolution. Incomplete.
Yes.
Incomplete.
And that's the thing that, like, I look at with cryptozoology as a science, like basic high school science.
Yeah.
You find data, you create a hypothesis, and see if that hypothesis is correct.
Yeah.
A lot of people nowadays, they create the hypothesis without correlating evidence.
Okay, I just can't stand people saying I have a theory.
Yeah.
Do you have a theory or do you have a hypothesis?
Yes.
Because I'll let you hypothesize anything.
Yeah.
But if you say you have a theory, now we need to talk evidence.
And you have evidence, data that's correlated.
That's right. That's right. And
people have that now.
And that's just it. We have, and I think a lot of that has to do with the quote religion of science, and the fact of science. Oh, well, that's science. Well, you know what's funny is my high school astronomy textbook, which I still have. Pluto's a planet. Pluto's not on my son's astrological chart.
Yes.
From NASA of planets, it's not on there.
Yeah.
You know, so science is not static. By definition, it cannot be static.
Yes.
It is always in flex. It is always in flex. And the day that you say this is decided upon science, you are walking a fine, fine line of danger.
Yes.
Because that could all be obliterated next week.
It almost becomes almost propaganda at some point.
Absolutely.
It becomes almost a religion.
And that's why I refer to it as the religion of science.
Yes.
Because there are still those scientists out there that are open of mind, that are open of heart, that are they are the modern Magellans. They're doing it.
Yes.
And then there are the others that just toe the line.
They're stuck in the paradigm.
And hey, great. You've written 25 books. Maybe reconsider what you've written. That's okay.
Yes.
Plato said a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
He was never unwilling to question what he said.
Yeah.
And we need to remember that.
How I say it, it's always easier to say you're wrong than you're right. Because once you say you're right, you have to show evidence.
Now you got to back it up, and you got to keep backing it up.
Yes.
So I want to thank you for the time today. Thank you so much. It's always great talking with you.
Of course.
Let the audience know where they can go to keep up with the Cryptid Chronicles, where they can go to buy Cryptids of the World, all that good stuff. Shameless self-promotion time, Ryan.
If you want to go on YouTube and check out the Cryptid Chronicles on YouTube, it's my channel. You can go check out my podcast. Usually in the description down below in the Cryptid Chronicles, I have thecryptidchronicles.net. That's my website. There I have my podcast linked. Also a link to my book. There you can go on to Barnes & Noble, Half Price Books. You can find my book there. The Cryptid Chronicles, it's fairly small right now, but thanks to people like you can go there, subscribe, view it, love it. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time today. Once again, everybody, while you were online checking out all the great work from Ryan Edwards and the Cryptid Chronicles, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. That is where you can find all the episodes. That's where you can fill out your experiencer form if you have had experience with Bigfoot, cryptids, the paranormal. If you're a targeted individual, stop on by, fill out our form, give us your evidence. You can upload pictures, video, all that kind of good stuff. CuriousRealm.com/story is the link to that. Stay tuned. Right after this, we will be coming back with more coverage from the Texas Bigfoot Conference here in the Bigfoot Capitol of Texas, Jefferson. We'll be right back after this. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Curious Realm. Stay tuned for more guests, forbidden topics, and hidden truths. Download the official Curious Realm app and view the Knowledge Vault on our website, CuriousRealm.com. Follow us on social media by searching Curious Realm. Curious Realm is available on your favorite podcast services, as well as YouTube, Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV through the APR TV app, available on all app markets. Curious Realm is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. For more great content or to become a sponsor of Curious Realm or other podcasts, visit hcuniversalnetwork.com today. Thanks for listening. Stay curious. And remember, the other side is always watching.